Why do you think a family would suddenly leave their large, comfortable, and warm home, rushing into the freezing cold, braving the biting winds and harsh winter night? We could try to guess together. Maybe their house was being robbed, or perhaps there was an accident, like a gas leak or a fire. We could even imagine something more sinister, like a deranged serial killer stalking the halls, swinging an axe with no mercy in sight. Anything else would make this family seem utterly insane, right? But let me stop you right there. My dear listener, I'm about to shatter all your guesses. And be warned, what I'm about to share is not for the faint-hearted. Let's begin. But before we dive into this video, which is packed with exciting events, theories, and interpretations, make sure to grab a snack or your favorite drink. Don't forget to support me with a like and subscribe. Let's get started. On November 19, 1992, at precisely 2:03 a.m., in the early morning hours of Vallecas, a neighborhood in the Spanish capital of Madrid, a police patrol of 5 officers, led by Inspector Jose Pedro Negri, arrived at 8 Luis Marin Street. There, they would encounter a terrified family who chose the biting cold of the night over the safety of their own home. The report indicated that something unknown had disrupted their peace and driven them into the street. The head of the family, Maximo Gutierrez Palomares, 46 at the time, had called the authorities, desperate to put an end to whatever was haunting them. The police, assuring the family that everything would be all right, immediately entered the house to investigate. But at 3 a.m., another call came into the station. This time, not from the family, but from Inspector Jose himself. His voice, filled with palpable anxiety, stammered through the phone, struggling to describe what he had witnessed inside the house. He reported something far beyond the ordinary, a chilling series of phenomena that, as he said, made my hair stand on end. He added that these events were a series of unexplainable occurrences, impossible for any human mind to comprehend. In March 1990, on what seemed like just another ordinary day, 16-year-old Maria Estefania Gutierrez woke up, ready for school. She was the third of 6 siblings: Quirobina, Marianella, Ricardo, Maximiliano, and Jose Luis. Like any other day, she grabbed a quick breakfast, kissed her father Maximo and her mother Concepcion goodbye, and left for school. Her home, located on Luis Marin Street in the Palomares Suris district of Vallecas, Madrid, was only minutes away. But that bright and lively girl had no idea how drastically her life would change that day. At school, one of Maria's classes was canceled due to a teacher's absence. So, she took out a book from her bag and began reading. Moments later, 2 of her friends approached her. Without much explanation, they insisted that she come with them to the school's restroom. Maria, curious but unbothered, followed her friends. What she soon discovered was an invitation to play the Ouija board. Having played the game several times before, Maria was no stranger to it. In fact, she quickly took charge, leading the session. One of her friends had recently lost a close companion and wanted to reach out to check on him, to see how he was faring on the other side. Without further delay, the 3 friends gathered around the familiar Ouija board, its surface etched with numbers and letters. With a makeshift planchette, a glass, they placed their index fingers on its rim. The session began, their eyes closed, as they whispered questions into the silence, waiting for a response from the unknown. But the session was abruptly interrupted when their teacher, Dolores Molina, entered the restroom. Her dismay at seeing the girls circled around the Ouija board was immediate. angry and scolding them. She snatched the board and broke it into pieces, voicing her disappointment with stern reprimands. In the midst of the commotion, none of them noticed a strange occurrence beside them. The glass they had used as a planchette began to fill with thick smoke, seemingly out of nowhere. Suddenly, it shattered into fragments, and to their horror, the smoke was inhaled by Maria. This terrifying event, witnessed by the teacher and her two friends, marked the beginning of a nightmare that would soon spiral into something far more sinister. As a result of that Ouija session, Maria's behavior took a sudden, disturbing turn. Her relationship with her family deteriorated drastically, so much so that she even attempted to physically harm her siblings and parents on several occasions. She became highly sensitive, prone to fits of rage. Perhaps this behavior was linked to her sleepless nights, as her family reported that Maria struggled to sleep after that fateful day at school. She was plagued by hallucinations and visions, dark shadows surrounding her bed, urging her to follow them. At times, she would speak in strange, guttural voices, sounds that seemed to come from deep within her. According to her mother, Maria would sometimes drift into a trance-like state for 15 to 20 minutes, unresponsive to the world around her, only to end with an eerie, prolonged laugh. And when asked what had happened, Maria would describe being in a long corridor that led to a fog-covered hall, from which malicious voices called out to her. Honestly, I'm not sure what's so funny about that. Over time, Maria's strange symptoms only worsened. Her fits of rage and hallucinations became more violent and frequent. Her sister Marianella, who shared a room with Maria, claimed that one night she saw her sister levitate while lying in bed. Other family members also witnessed bizarre occurrences. On one occasion, Maria went to iron some clothes in the bathroom. According to her mother, Maria screamed after seeing a ghostly figure, and to make matters worse, the iron had seemingly turned itself on. Maria's mother confirmed this when she checked the iron. It was glowing as if plugged in, yet not connected to the power outlet. Strangely, it wasn't even hot. But this incident with the iron was nothing compared to what happened next. Suddenly, the bathroom door slammed shut on its own. Maria's father, Maximo, tried to help his wife and daughter open the door, but all attempts were futile. Something was keeping it tightly sealed. Just as Maximo was about to kick the door open, they all watched in disbelief as it smoothly opened on its own. As for Maria, her parents naturally began to suspect she might be suffering from some kind of illness, perhaps a neurological disorder. They took her to various specialists, visiting up to 4 different medical centers, searching for answers. Yet, no doctor could offer a clear diagnosis or effective treatment. One doctor suggested that Maria might have epilepsy, and she even followed an epilepsy treatment regimen. However, the medication had little to no effect. Furthermore, her symptoms didn't resemble those of epilepsy at all. Her mother, Concepcion, had herself suffered from epilepsy for years, but never experienced hallucinations or the strange disturbances her daughter was now facing. Things kept getting worse, and it became painfully clear to Concepcion as she listened to her daughter's strange request one night. Maria asked her not to tell the rest of the family about her impending death. She told her mother that when they find her dead, they must bury a photo of her father beside her. What a request. One night in July 1991, Maria experienced one of her most severe episodes. She attacked her sister like a wild animal. Fortunately, Marianella managed to avoid her, and Maria fell to the ground, convulsing violently. Her eyes were shut tight, foam flowed from her mouth, and she quickly lost consciousness. When she awoke, she claimed to remember nothing of the incident. The following day seemed normal. She met her friend Pablo in the afternoon for a walk, returned home early, had dinner, and went to bed. That night, everyone was woken by Maria's screams. She had another seizure, seemingly more intense than the previous nights. Her mother describes the scene. Maria continued to convulse violently for half an hour, holding her head with her hands, while foam poured from her mouth. She was rushed to Gregorio Marañón Hospital and lost consciousness completely. After 3 hours, at 2 a.m. on July 14th, the tragedy reached its peak as Maria died from respiratory asphyxia due to the seizure, a highly unusual diagnosis for someone her age. The forensic specialist, with the death certificate signed by the hospital director Pedro Cabeza and chief medical officer Gregorio Arroyo Arrieta, noted that Maria's death was sudden and suspicious. Interestingly, Maria had told her family on the morning of her death that she would die. Yet, shortly after, her demeanor changed completely. Her features relaxed, and even her voice altered. Was Maria foretelling her own death? Or was there something more mysterious at play? Ricardo, Maria's brother, recalls that she had often told him she would visit them from the other side and assured them not to worry about her death, as she would come back again. The cursed house. After Maria's death, and despite their attempts to move on, the family experienced a period of uneasy calm. They slowly began to recover from the grief of losing their daughter, just when they thought the shadow of their sorrow had lifted. Little did they know that the horror was only just beginning. Initially, the strange occurrences were subtle and infrequent. Objects moving on their own, doors opening and closing by themselves, and one morning, Maria's bed was found in a state of disarray. But things soon escalated. Concepcion began to feel a cold hand touching her distinctly on some nights, and at times, she would find the bed sheets removed from her bed by an unseen force. Undoubtedly, the mother believed that over the years following Maria's death, she frequently heard a voice calling out Mommy. The source of this voice seemed to be coming from the bathroom. This led the family to become convinced that the source of the eerie occurrences surrounding them was the bathroom adjacent to Estefania's room, the very place where Estefania had experienced those unsettling communications with what she described as inhabitants from the other world. In response, the family sought the help of a spiritualist who claimed that the bathroom was a portal through which vengeful spirits entered this world. The couple became so convinced by these claims that they decided to close off the bathroom completely. From then on, no family member dared to use the bathroom alone. They had to be accompanied by someone else whenever they needed to use the alternative bathroom. Up until that point, one could argue that the phenomena were somewhat manageable. Over time, the family began to adapt and live with the disturbances. Perhaps Maria, feeling lonely and isolated, was simply seeking companionship by causing these disturbances. They even started leaving an empty chair and a plate of food at their main meals. And curiously, the chair would move as if someone was actually pulling it to sit down, although the food remained untouched. However, things took a darker turn when the family began noticing a terrifying shadow in the hallway of their home, along with malicious laughter. Over time, Concepcion became convinced that the shadow and the voice belonged to her father, who had passed away 5 months before Maria from old age dementia. Their relationship had been strained, marked by financial disputes that had soured their bond. It was said that just before his death, Concepcion's father had sworn to make her and her family's lives a living nightmare. It seemed he had returned to fulfill his promise. The disturbances escalated to unbearable levels when they began threatening the family's physical safety. Members of the family started experiencing being pushed down the stairs. Their beloved pet turned aggressive, often appearing to chase something unseen. The gentle touches Concepcion felt in her sleep turned into violent tugging, and one night, the father awoke to his wife's screams. It seemed as if someone was pulling her by her feet, trying to throw her off the bed, but when he turned on the lights, the pulling stopped abruptly. The events continued to intensify. While Concepcion and her son Ricardo were talking at the dining table, a glass suddenly levitated and was hurled towards Ricardo's head. Fortunately, Concepcion warned him just in time, and the glass shattered around him. Fear gripped the family, and as a result, they moved their beds to the living room to spend the nights together and protect one another. They also barricaded the door connecting to the hallway with heavy furniture to isolate themselves from the tormenting spirits. Despite these precautions, they were ineffective. The mysterious entities could still throw objects against the living room walls from outside and open doors regardless of how heavy the barriers were. The Gutierrez family was consumed by collective hysteria as the haunting continued unabated. In a desperate bid for relief and salvation, the house became a pilgrimage site for spiritualists, mediums, and those claiming to communicate with the other side. Of course, none of these services were offered out of goodwill or charity. They came at exorbitant prices, forcing the family into significant debt to meet their demands. Ultimately, these individuals proved to be nothing more than fraudsters, exploiting the family's tragic situation for personal gain. One claimed that a demon named Crapola had possessed Maria's body and consumed her soul before her death, and that this demon had claimed the house as its own. Another claimed to possess a ghost hunting device, which the family purchased at a steep price, only to later realize they had been duped. November 1992 was especially tumultuous. One night, Marianella and Curabina saw a faceless creature, a dark shadow, slithering across their bedroom floor and hurling objects through the air. The girls tried to use a small lamp to scare the entity away, but it swung so rapidly that directing the light at it was impossible. When one of them bravely approached the lamp switch, the shadow had vanished. The parents witnessed the fear on their daughters' faces, but did not see the entity themselves until November 19th, when they saw it crawling down the hallway. To add to the eerie occurrences, one night the family noticed Ricardo's ball rolling towards him on its own. Wanting to reassure his family, the father kicked the ball, but it changed direction midair without hitting anything and bounced back towards him. According to the family, these shadows or spirits seemed intent on leaving tangible evidence of their presence. They began appearing draped in head coverings, resembling monks, as if to leave a physical mark of their haunting. On one occasion, Concepcion spread flour across the hallway of the house. Remarkably, the next day, footprints of a man's shoe appeared in the flour. On another occasion, when the family left the house empty for a while, they had tied all the doors shut with ropes. Upon their return, they discovered that all the knots had been completely undone. They had also installed a burglary alarm system, which went off one day while the house was empty. The family reports that most of these phenomena occur only in the dark and start precisely at 2 a.m., the time of Maria's death. So the question remains, were these occurrences truly happening to the family? And did these phenomena actually exist at all? As previously mentioned, the night of November 19th marked a breaking point for the family. After a prolonged period of unsuccessful attempts to adapt and being deceived by fraudsters and shamans who were merely after their money, Maximo, the father, saw no other option but to call the police. The call was vague and incomprehensible to the department head, as summoning the police for an unknown entity was unusual. Initially, the police suspected Maximo might be drunk or under the influence of drugs. They questioned him about details of his marriage to Concepcion, who confirmed his answers. Yet, this alone was not enough to convince them of the couple's story. The officers also interviewed the children, who corroborated the details, all showing evident fear and terror. During the family interview, Inspector Negri was astonished to see a small cabinet door nearby open and close by itself repeatedly. At this point, four officers decided to leave the house and descend to the front gate, leaving only the inspector, his assistant, and the family inside. Inspector Negri began inspecting the house, especially the doors, to check if anyone had used a mechanism to make them open and close on their own. He found nothing. Shortly afterward, while discussing the events and continuing the inspection, a loud crashing noise was heard on the balcony, resembling a rock or pot being thrown. The officers rushed outside to investigate, but found nothing. Meanwhile, as the officer investigated the noise, a distinct female scream echoed through the house. Rushing back to the living room, they found a brown, muddy stain on the tablecloth. The family insisted the scream was Maria's. Inspector Negri instructed his assistant to collect a sample of the substance. As he prepared to leave with the family, feeling his composure slip, he fired 3 shots at a strange figure he saw rushing down the stairs. However, when the assistant returned with the team to collect the samples, the substance had vanished completely. During another inspection, one of the officers noticed a cross in a room had been turned upside down. This was peculiar because it had been correctly positioned when they first entered the house for a prayer after the terrifying events. Additionally, a statue of Christ had completely disappeared, even though neither the police officers nor the family had revisited that area. Inspector Negri then observed a securely locked door concealed behind an oddly placed wardrobe in a corner. When he requested that the wardrobe be moved and the door be opened, the family protested. This door led to the bathroom they had previously avoided using. Despite their objections, Inspector Negri insisted on opening it. Upon entering, Negri felt an intense chill, so severe it made him shiver. The bathroom was cluttered with items that, according to the family, had belonged to Maria. These items had mysteriously disappeared, and the family had not anticipated finding them here. With growing frustration, Negri decided to leave the bathroom and immediately contacted the police station, reporting that he was encountering a series of inexplicable phenomena. All these details are documented in the police report, proving that the incidents were indeed real. So, if we entertain the notion that the Gutierrez family might be delusional, would it be reasonable to believe the police were too? Theories. In the final part of our story, we'll explore the most popular theories surrounding the cursed house in Vallecas. After presenting these theories, you will have the freedom to choose whether to believe or dismiss them. Perhaps you have a more plausible theory of your own, one that offers a rational explanation and brings comfort to the mind. Who knows? Exaggeration. As mentioned, Concepcion, Maria's mother, had suffered from epilepsy at one point, though she did not experience hallucinations like Maria did. However, there is a significant development. Concepcion's former doctor, who had left the country in 1990, 2 years before the events began, returned to reveal shocking facts about his patient. He described Concepcion's condition as extremely severe. The police had relied on hospital records to report Concepcion's symptoms, but Concepcion had been undergoing long-term treatment with the doctor before seeking hospital care. Consequently, her symptoms may have appeared normal due to the extensive treatment she had received. This theory suggests that the mother might have exaggerated Maria's condition and the incidents in the house. Could her mental state have driven her to fabricate events, especially since all the children were young and susceptible to influence? It's worth noting that 90% of the accounts came from the mother and her children, while the father only believed their claims. Perhaps he was influenced by the consensus on the strange occurrences in the house, especially if they were orchestrated by a mentally unstable person. You might be wondering, if we assume the mother was delusional and able to fabricate things, what about the police officers? The appearance theory. This theory is an extension of the first one, but focuses specifically on the police, particularly on Inspector Jose Negri. Looking into Negri's past, he had a long history of craving fame and enjoyed portraying himself as a hero. He always dreamt of becoming the media's next big story. Well, there's nothing criminal about it. But if you can't find a major crime to be involved in, why not exploit a sensational story about ghosts and spirits in a cursed house in Vallecas? From this perspective, it worked perfectly. Jose Negri's name and story became prominent in the newspapers and media of the time, which is well documented. Regarding the strange events, it's possible that Negri, along with his team, fabricated them. It wouldn't have been difficult at all. The killer mother theory. The third theory involves the mother, Concepcion, and suggests that Maria's death may have been due to an accidental overdose. Some doctors were skeptical about the strange and sudden nature of Maria's death, leading to a second examination of the body after a period of time. The examination revealed the presence of carbamazepine, a medication used to treat epilepsy, which is very dangerous if not administered in precise doses. The theory posits that Concepcion, perhaps with good intentions, may have accidentally given Maria a dose of carbamazepine that was too high. Instead of calming her, the overdose could have led to her death. To cover up the incident, the family might have concocted the story of shadows, ghosts, and a haunted house to divert attention from the real cause of Maria's death. Friends and Maria's teacher confirmed that she did indeed play with the Ouija board that day, but they also noted that Maria did not seem significantly different until after a period of time. This delay could have been when the symptoms of her illness began to manifest. The haunted house theory. One of Maria's close friends mentioned in a television interview years after the incident that Maria had confided in her about unusual occurrences in the house even before playing with the Ouija board. She said that Maria had described seeing strange shadows watching her throughout the day. What happened to the Gutierrez family? Gradually, for reasons unknown, the paranormal phenomena seemed to diminish. The family eventually reopened and used the bathroom again. Life started to return to normal for them. In the end, they decided to move away from the neighborhood and the house was sold. The new occupants of the Gutierrez home never reported any strange occurrences. In conclusion, what do you, dear listener, think about this strange and intriguing story? Could any of the theories be correct, or did the otherworldly truly play a role in it? We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you have another theory of your own, or if you have any insights to share, please don't hesitate to let us know. Your input could shed new light on this mysterious tale.